Let's jump into the technology now so that listeners understand, we're going to kind of give them or walk them through this experience. So let's talk about the technology, how you're assessing brain waves. And obviously this gets super technical, but you can just give us the brief rundown so we understand
Yeah,
what the headband is doing and what kinds of things you're looking at with the app.
sure. So here's the headband. It's really low profile. It's very simple, lightweight. It
Mm-hmm.
takes about 10 seconds to put on. It's like
Mm-hmm.
a heart rate monitor for your brain. So there's no signals going into your brain. We're just measuring the electrical activity that your brain naturally produces, is constantly producing.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that whole thing works is your brain is made up of about 100 billion neurons, brain cells. And one way in which they communicate is through these electrical signals. And when enough of your brain cells fire in unison, the signal is clear enough and strong enough for us to detect on your scalp. So right now on your forehead, there are these subtle electrical signals that are making their way from your brain all the way out to your skin. And so the headband has these gold-plated sensors that make contact with your forehead, just like kind of like a heart rate monitor for your brain. And we're looking at the pulses coming from your brain. And one way to think about it is when you're asleep and you're not even dreaming, you can imagine your brain's kind of pulsing at a bit slower of a rate. If you're awake but relaxed, maybe it's a little quicker. And if you're really highly stressed, you can imagine your brain's going a mile a minute. The neurons are firing super,
Mm-hmm.
super quick. So what we're looking for is the differences in your brain activity. And we're using a really advanced approach based on machine learning that looks at over 1,000 features in your brain signal every single second. And we're comparing the signature we see coming from your brain to our model of what a really relaxed brain looks like or what a really stressed brain looks like. And we're able to give you your FocusCalm score, which goes from 0 all the way to 100. 100 means your mind looks really at ease. You're not using a lot of mental energy. Your mind is at rest. And a really low score, closer to 0, means your brain's using a ton of energy. It's going really, really fast. Maybe it means you're really, really, really active, or maybe even really, really stressed. And what we train people to do through the learn, strengthen, challenge process is to raise their FocusCalm score, be more at ease, even when they're facing these taxing situations in the challenge step.
Got it. Obviously, this is very, based on a lot of research and even just to have a consumer device, right, to record and read the electrical signals coming out of your brain. Can you explain a little bit, understanding that there's the gamut of scores, right? Explain a little bit on average. I guess I don't like to use normal, but, normal ranges of someone that's like, let's say you're at a day of work, you have a stressful meeting, right? Like, where do we usually sit versus like
Yeah,
if you're playing a physical activity, like in a game, where are we usually
right.
sitting kind of in this scale of 0 to 100 just to get an idea?
Yeah, yeah. It depends on the person and the environment, of course, and any training that you've done.
Hmm.
But the thing that typically happens is when you put the headband on and you're just kind of looking at your score, not really doing much. You're probably around 40 to 60, right in the middle. If you make an intention to put your mind at ease and kind of let go and relax, your score will naturally start to rise within a few seconds.
Okay.
And the better you get at this, like particularly if you have skill in meditation, you can go really, really high, really, really quick. So just like any skill, you get better and better at controlling this mindset. If you're at 40 to 60, kind of hanging out, and then something kind of surprises you or stresses you out, or you get kind of like a little bit of a jolt, your score will drop pretty quickly too.
Hmm.
So the score is fluid. It's always changing.
Yeah.
But kind of to tie it back to what we were talking about before about being in the driver's seat, because it's always changing, that also means you always have an opportunity to get it to lean in the direction that you want.
Got it. No, that's super interesting. So you have one sensor in the front, right? Is it detecting any other? I don't even really understand this. You can fill in the gaps, but is it
Yeah.
detecting any other sections or lobes of your brain, or how does
Yeah.
that kind of tie in or make a difference to what you're doing?
So there's 3 sensors in the front right here. So
Okay.
it's touching 3 little spots on your forehead.
Okay.
And it's not like you can feel anything from the sensors. That's just where they're located.
Hmm.
And you put the headband on, and because they're located on the front of your head, your forehead,
Yes.
we are picking up a lot of activity from your entire brain. Like the way EEG works is you're picking up activity that your brain is producing. So even parts of your brain that aren't quite in the frontal regions,
Hmm.
because the sensors are here and the way that your brain works, we're getting kind of like a general impression of your brain state. So the sensors are mostly focused on the frontal region because of the placement, but it is kind of getting this holistic view of what's going on in your brain. When you start adding more sensors, you can get more specific, and there are models that can predict where the activity is coming from, and different parts of your brain have different functions. And, for example, if you put sensors on the back of your head on your occipital lobe, you can pick up a lot more of the processing that's going on with your visual system. So if you're interested in, what's the type of information that your visual system is processing, it's better to have the sensors back here. We chose 3 sensors in the forehead location for ease of use and accessibility. The more sensors you add, number one, it gets more expensive.
Yep.
And number 2, especially if you start having sensors that are located where your hair is, it gets more complicated to get a signal. But by keeping them on the forehead, it's really, really simple. That's something that we get complimented a lot on our headband, is it's one of the, if not the easiest consumer brainwave sensing headbands to use. You can put it on within a few seconds. You can see your score. The Bluetooth is really, really reliable, so that the user can focus on the actual training experience rather than fussing with, this technology and getting frustrated. We spent a lot of time making sure this was as easy to use as possible. And someone with no neuroscience experience, can start using it within just a few minutes.
Yes. No, that makes a lot of sense now. And yes, especially like conductivity with hair, right? Especially if, you can't control that, right? It's not directly on your skin. So obviously it's going to impede the signals and what you're sensing. So that makes a lot of sense. And it looks like it's very lightweight. It's easy to put on, right?